It's one of those giant pains. Microphone Yeti. Let's see if that works. Okay, so now I'm talking, and we'll see if the sound actually comes through. So I'm going to give it just a second while it sort of catches up. YouTube catches up. So yes, if the sound is now working, which I hope it is, what tends to happen every time Windows decides to update, the sound gets knocked out, and so therefore I find things don't work very well. I believe that's working there. You should have sound coming through on that screen. There's sound working on that screen there, and there should be sound on that screen, which means let's check all of them, make sure that they haven't affected anything. Window capture. Okay, alright, I apologize for that. Windows is a pain, but it looks like it's working now, so that's good news. I was getting worried. I was like, I feel like I just walked right back in time. Anyway, I'm going to show you everything behind the scenes. Let's get rocking, because I've spent way too long trying to figure out my technical issues right now. So let's start, shall we? Hi, welcome to How to RPG. My name is Fred Wheeler, and today I want to talk about role-playing games. Specifically, the topic for today is how do you deal with the basics of combat? And so I'm going to kind of show you a lot of different stuff. I've been working on this before. This will be the last time we work on this in this form. So in other words, you'll see all the stuff I do behind the scenes. So I'm going to be making some stuff now, and I'll be putting some stuff in. So yeah, that's the intention for today. So you're going to be seeing my Google documents in a second. There is a poll. I put up a poll, so feel free to take part in that poll. And let me just catch up with the screen here, since it doesn't work until I start up OBS. Okay, cool. Right, so that's good. By all means, feel free to share your opinions of what I'm doing here. I will certainly take note of it. Doesn't mean I'll always listen to it, but I'll certainly take note of it. Okay, so let's just show you the Google Doc first. This is the slideshow that I made on Google Docs, and it's basically sort of it's the same format as the 5E rules basic combat that I used, but the difference is that I'm trying to expand on it a little bit. So I've got an overview, I've got my objectives, don't worry about that scene. Combat turn order, used to be called initiative, but that's essentially what we're going to call it for now. How to determine your turn order. Your types of actions. I've got a bit of stuff going on here. We broke it all down into sort of what that looks like for any kind of game, and then attack actions, casting a spell, running or dashing, so moving more than just once, disengage, which I don't know how I feel about the word using disengage, dodge or evade, something like that. There's a few other things that I might call it. And then you got teamwork, which is kind of like working together, and help action and stuff like that. Searching and investigating, using an object. I don't know how I'm going to describe that, or maybe I'll use word using an object. It doesn't matter so much, I guess. And then miscellaneous recommendations. So that's the slideshow. So the slideshow is mostly done. The real work that needs to be done is actually in my Google document, where I've been putting stuff together. And I was looking at it and thinking, like, how much more work is left to do? And there's actually not much, which is good news. I'm kind of happy about that. It's a good sign when you feel like you've actually got most of the way through a particular project. Now, I'm perfectly aware that this is probably not going to appeal to a lot of people, and that's perfectly fine. But this is your chance to have your 2 cents and put in your feedback on anything that I've written down. Certainly something that maybe I need to separate things a little bit, present it a different way. The intention is that once I finish this one and the complex combat mechanics next week, we will run into specific game systems, and this time slot will be designated for going over those. So that means the dice, the miniatures, and my little whiteboard comes out again. Okay? Alright, so combat turn order and initiative. I'm going to come back to this in a second, because actually what I want to do before I forget is I actually wanted to dissect this just a little bit. So we will take that and I will cut it. Because I was looking at it and I was realizing, well, actually, maybe I want to separate those two ideas, and I kind of do. So turn order rolls. And we'll come back to that. I'll put a little question mark there, and hopefully everybody can see what's going on. And there we go. Right, so let's go down. The actions, we spend a lot of time on the types of actions in a battle, like full round actions and what is called just an action that you kind of used to as being like a standard action or an action in 5e. Minor actions, swift actions, half actions, lesser actions, bonus actions, which are all sort of stuff that's less than a full round and is less than an action. Then you've got your movement, your free actions and what they might look like, interruptions, reactions, and then how many different types of actions do you get depending on the rule system. Okay, so we've got that, and then attack types. So that's the melee weapon attacks, that's the ranged weapon attacks, the shrine weapons, and the unarmed strikes. So we've got all of our basic attacks broken down. I'm pretty happy with all of that, so I don't need to do anything with it. Casting a spell, I'm going to go through this very quickly, people. Melee attack spells, ranged attack spells, your melee saving throw spells, your ranged saving throw spells. I've given some examples of each of these. Most of these examples are from 5e, so if you're not familiar with 5e, I understand. Okay, and then the automatic success spells, things that just work, don't require an attack roll or a saving throw. Movement, I needed to talk a little bit more about movement. This is something that I don't know how else to state it, but movement's been done a lot of different ways in a lot of different games, and I think probably the movement system that I like the most is actually the way that they do it in 5e. For all the things that I dislike, 5e actually does it in a manner that I actually feel like is a good idea. So I'm not going to present that idea, I'm just going to present a couple of different ideas there. So dodge, evade, block, and full defense, I'm going to consider them sort of partly lumped together. We might sort of break that out a little bit more. Teamwork, help, aid, and assistance, they're all essentially the same ideas, but that's mostly done too. Search and investigate, or noticing stuff, that's mostly done too. Using an object, using objects. We're just going to call it using objects because that's really what it is, objects. Okay, and I will just down here. If people have questions, just let me know what they are, and I will certainly do my best to help. And that's not going to work because I had it in capitals. Using objects. Drop down and up. Okay. Bam. Right, so you can see there's a lot of sort of me tidying things up here. I need to talk about this here, the drawing and stowing of weapons, which I think has been tidied up by 5e in their one D&D playtest. Honestly, I think they've actually done a reasonable job of trying to sort that out. Okay, I don't know what that message is, but I'll have to bear in mind to check it. Okay, so that's that bit. So let's untangle some of these things that I have highlighted as being sort of problem areas first. So using objects, or use an object. Okay, using an object requires you use a main action so that the character or monster can manipulate objects or the environment if the interaction has already been used during a creature's turn for free, or the task will take too much effort or time. And this is the 5e way of doing things. Okay, but that's not really what I wanted to just have here. What I want to do is I want to sort of build this out a little bit. Particularly for those of you who are looking to modify or make changes to your own game. Is that Kyle Rell? Hello, how are you? It's glad to see somebody in the chat. I almost thought I was alone. How are you doing? Okay. So using an object requires your main action. So this is that aspect of it. So there's a couple of reasons why they do it this way in 5e. And there's a couple of reasons why other game systems do it a particular way and why they sort of define it a bit more. And I've been looking at the first ed edition, second ed edition, Advanced Dungeons and Dragons. I've looked at Star Wars Saga. I've been looking at 4e, and I've been looking at 3.5. And one of the biggest factors for trying to define and codify using an object is it's such a broad concept. So it's such a broad concept that you could wind up with players trying to do too much on their turn. And so that's why they kind of put some restrictions on it in the first place. So that's part of the aspect of it. The other aspect is we don't want people's turns to take too long. So using an object in battles can have many different well, I guess time periods, time frames, and has a wide range of effort required. Okay, so because that's part of your problem, these some of the issues around using an object in a battle, which is not necessarily something that comes up that often. Let's get real. But there are some things that do come up quite a lot, and one of them is drawing and stowing a weapon. So using an object in combat can have many different time frames and have a wide range of effort required. So that means setting rules around manipulating objects or the environment are set up to avoid exploitation by players and reduce the time it takes to complete the person's turn. Okay. Okay, there we go. So what do you got here? Action, free action, action, multiple action. Yes. So there's a reason why they do this. There's a couple of things here, and I don't want to go into a lot of detail around using an object, but I would say the two things in terms of using an object that we probably don't want to worry too much about, and I was really glad to see that 1D&D was starting to implement this, and that is drawing and stowing weapons. That's drawing an arrow to notch to a bow. It's part of your attack or your main action. These are all really sort of simple things that we don't need to necessarily define. Even the likes of opening a door. It shouldn't really be a big issue as long as the door is not difficult to open. If it's a normal door in our own house, would we really take that long to open that door? I mean, that's really what we're looking at. If you think in terms of a lot of rounds, and I mean, at D&D, 6 seconds is a round. That's a long time. So you've got quite a lot of time to get stuff done. You can probably open a door and do something else in 6 seconds, right? So yeah. Let's just put down this. There can be an issue around what is reasonable to do on a player's turn. Such as draw or stow a weapon. Well, actually, that's actually not the issue, is it? Those are things that probably shouldn't be an issue. So let's go here. So drawing or stowing a weapon doesn't take very long, but doing this multiple times might times will take longer. Okay. So there's a reason why they put limits in for that sort of thing. It can be an issue what is reasonable to do in a player's turn when opening a heavy door, lifting something heavy, or what's the other one that I was going to put in here that's really standard? Prepare, cook and survive. Hello, how are you? Oh my gosh, there are people here. So for those of you who are used to me posting these live streams in my community tab, I know that certainly helped make it visible. I'm stopping doing that. Okay, so I'm glad to see that there are some people here. Hello, how are you? I decided to stop doing that for a couple of different reasons, but my primary reason is I know that most of you do check, and you know that I have a routine now, and so you come back, and those community posts I was doing with those videos were only going to ever go out to my subscribers, or a portion of my subscribers who are subscribed and hit the bell button. So I stopped doing that, and I'm just going to do the polls or notify you of something that's happening on somebody else's channel, like the Game Master Roundtable stuff, or sort of news stuff that I need to sort of keep you up to date with. Okay, right. Lifting something heavy. Or now, what's another thing? Can somebody think of something in their game around using an object? When somebody wanted to use an object, but they didn't want it to use their entire action, but it was probably more reasonable that it use up their entire action rather than it be a free action or an interaction or a swift action or something like that. I'm just trying to think off the top of my head. A heavy door, opening a heavy door, kind of pretty common. Okay, this can be an issue around what is reasonable to do on one player's turn, such as opening a heavy door, lifting something heavy, and I don't want to say pulling a lever, because that's not really something that has come up in my games. If it's come up in your games, by all means let me know. But for the life of me, I can't think of anything that sort of goes around this. I'm kind of stuck, so I'm putting a little question mark there on that one. What would be, can I pull something from one of these books in front of me? Since I've got all 5 in front of me now, is there something I can pull from here that would help me with this? I like the idea of giving examples. I've always liked the idea that sometimes there's too much assumed and not enough just told. Yeah, they leave it so vague, right? And so you wind up as a game master. Here's where we probably get some interesting things developing here. So getting something out of your pack. I've never understood why getting something from your pack seems to take so little time. They've made the time frame for that so short. I've put my foot in a door with the option to close or go through it. Oh, okay. All right. Yes. I don't think that takes a lot of time. Okay, there can be some issues around what is reasonable to do on one player's turn when it takes more effort. such as opening a heavy door, lifting something heavy, and getting something from your backpack. I think that's the one that we have the most issues with in my table now that I think about it, because it's currently in 5e. It's listed as an interaction. Taking an item from a backpack. Did I just manage to be good? No. Come on, backpack. Backpack. Good Lord. Okay. In 5e, they have defined drinking a potion too, right? Or taking an item from a backpack. I also find it interesting that the idea of they've got here drinking ale from a mug can be done quickly, yet if you drink a potion, it takes longer. And I think that's mechanically done but it's a game reason why it's done, right? So I think those are the things that make sense. So I'm going to leave that as it is. In pack versus where in pack. Exactly, Derry. It's like it's in your pack. It's not like a pouch attached to your pack or a pouch on the side of your belt. So you'd have to open up the top of it. So that means taking it off, opening it up, getting at stuff, pulling stuff out, finding, is it at the bottom, is it at the top? It's not like a handy haversack. It's not like a magic item. Okay, so I'm pretty happy with that. Main action, manipulating objects or the environment. Object interactions, usually a free action. Tasks that may take more effort or time. So that's okay. I'm going to put that there. Manipulating objects or environment. Object interactions, usually a free action. And tasks to take. That's pretty much covered that. So that's good. Moving along. Teamwork and help, aid and assistance. Stoppers are stopped. Mugs are not unless it's Stein. Right. So you got to get it. You got to have it in your hand. You got to unstopper it, and you got to drink it. And I think it would be perfectly fine to say you can't drink a mug of beer as a free action. I think that would be kind of silly. And who's going to be doing that in the middle of combat anyway? Is it something we need to define? It's like it's I guess, was it necessary? It probably wasn't. Help or aid requires you use your action, usually so that character or monster can assist another creature's completion of a task. So that's very clear. Teamwork mechanics might grant characters or monsters advantage or a re-roll on dice or a numerical bonus on the next ability or attack dice roll test. Okay. So teamwork could allow for automatic success if the game master thinks it's appropriate, and player character's ability or attribute scores can be added together and compared with a large target number to complete a task or challenge. So I talked about this before. This is an old mechanic from older versions of D&D, where you take everybody's ability or attribute score and you add them together for whatever the task is. Say if it's lifting portcullis and you've got to get 50 or 60 or something like that, and if you get enough individuals doing this and you add all their scores together, working together, they achieve it. And that's another way of mechanically duplicating the idea of doing something like that. So if I can find my cursor, there we go. So I'm pretty happy, I think, with that one. Why do I have search and teamwork in a different place? Have I got search in there? Okay. Oh, did I miss search? I must have missed search. Search requires you use your main action as a character. This is a 5e mechanic. Can detect or find something that is hidden or hard to notice with a wisdom perception check or an intelligence investigation check. So this is D&D 5e. So let's mark it as that, because that's what it is. This isn't all systems, it isn't. Search or investigating takes time and usually is not very useful, helpful in combat, but is visually outside of combat. It's vital outside of combat. So yes, that it is. So I guess what I wanted to say is there's a couple of things that make it clear. I don't want to define down the concept of investigating a perception for 5e. That's not what I want to do here. What I want to do is I want to define what you're trying to achieve with searching and investigating. And I think that's where we want to sort of focus. He would define neck a drink mid combat. Okay. And I'm not entirely sure what that means. Prepare, cook, and survive. Okay. Now, so searching the environment. Refers to using the senses to detect something or find. Okay, detect or find something. That's what I wanted to say. Something with eyes, ears, nose, not noise, nose. Eyes, ears, nose. What else what am I missing here? Touch. What's another? Search versus scan. Searching or scanning. Thank you. I got it. I think they are pretty much the same thing. I think they are falling into the same sort of concept. Okay. So we're using our senses and we're using ears, eyes, ears, nose, touch. Or other sensory organs. I think that is what we're trying to do there. He's take on the bender from Futurama, but warforged with a Gatling gun junk. Okay. Some searches take longer than others, like Derry said, search versus scan. How's it going? Hello. Now, let me get this name right. Clarel. Clarel? Is it Clarel? Clarel? I think I've got Clarel right. Angus. Hello, Angus. How about smell? Did I miss smell? Well, that's your nose. Nose is smell. Yep, your nose, smell. I can put it in brackets if you would prefer. How's that sound? There you go. I'll put this here in brackets. Here we go. Hearing. Here. Brackets. Sight. Okay. Okay, so, and yes, you're right, because if we look at game systems, searching can take different lengths of time. So, searching or investigating an environment can take different lengths of time, and that is definitely where we're at. I think that's right. I'm pretty happy with that. I think that's sort of so older versions of the game, you could actually stipulate how long you're going to search for. So players need to stipulate to a game master how long they search and where. This is one of the things we kind of lose. There isn't, nobody finds a book in a bookshelf nowadays without rolling dice. What did you say? I search the bookshelf and I'm going to move all the books to see if something like a secret door opens up, or if there's something hidden behind them. That kind of searching. When you say we're going to search and what you're doing. Players would be better to stipulate to a game master how long they search and where. So those are things to consider. I think that's pretty good with the searching. We've actually sort of filled it out quite nicely as it happens. Searching usually requires an main action, detecting something hidden, wisdom, perception check, intelligence investigation check, and I want to add a little bit more here. So, okay, so considering different factors. That's what I want to put here. Okay, let me just shift this. And I'm not going to say that searching may not require your main action, because it may not really apply, particularly if searching doesn't make sense that you could do as your main action in combat. Searching may not be viable unless you take 30 minutes or an hour or a couple of hours to search, depending on the space you're working with. Detect something hidden. Okay, I think that is all I wanted to write there, which is like thankfully. So I'm going to just have a look at that in a second. I think I'd written everything I wanted to around teamwork here. I was pretty happy with what I'd put down here. It's just the slide, I guess. What do we got here? To be, how are you? I bet I started a minute 2 into the video, so I'm behind in chat. No, that's all right. Don't worry about it. That's cool. If you are using pheromones, then you can be they can be edited. I suppose it could be. I put other sensory organs, so that's fine too. I think we covered I covered the basics, specifically thigh-creen. Yeah, so that's why I put other sensory organs. You considered maybe having 2 actions in a turn, and maybe something that takes a long time to do takes up both actions, like in Lancer. No, so I'm not. So today, this is not building a game role system. This is looking at the sort of the theory behind the basics of combat. Hat's going off. So I'm not really trying to spell out. So this is why I changed the wording in the last statement, because I said something about the player needs to, and actually the player doesn't need to do anything. This is more abstract in nature. This is more conceptual stuff. Do you know what I mean? Because I know there's a lot of people who like to adjust the game themselves, and they're not all playing D&D, and they're not all playing 5e. So there's a lot of concepts from everybody that I'm kind of pulling together. Right. Dungeons and Chronics, hello, how are you? Just looked up thigh-creen, very cool. Yes, they are. You don't need to worry about if you're late. That's fine. Okay, so let's have a look at teamwork, because I'm a little way in, but not that far in. Teamwork. So what have I written here? Requires using main action. I would argue there are probably things that require more than just your main action. That's 5e we're talking about there. That's a 5e mechanic where you use your main action to do aid. action to task. So I'm going to put this here, mark it as 5e. A lot of versions of D&D did this, where they made it an action to do so. Teamwork mechanics might grant. I've already talked about this, already said this. We've already gone over automatic stuff, and we've already gone over adding them together. So what is it that I need to put into here? Requires using main action, question mark. That's what I wanted to say here. Sorry, now that I remember it. Some situations might require teamwork activities to take longer than a combat turn and will not apply to battles. So there might be things that you just can't do in 6 seconds to have any kind of impact. But a lot of the time the help action and teamwork is kind of referring to fighting. Help or aid requires you to use. Okay, there we go. Longer. Okay, aiding another creature's task or attack, that's what we're talking about. Granting advantage on check. Okay, and here, this is the other one I wanted to put in here. What's the bit that I wanted to say? Granting ally advantage on attack roll. On do I really want to? Do I want to leave it like that? Aid another creature's task. I think that kind of covers this. So I don't know that I want to put that in there. There was another thing I wanted to mention too, and that was, and did I mention this? This is the question. No, I did talk about numerical bonuses. That's what I want to say. Using reroll dice, mechanics, or bonuses. Bonuses. Oh, I'm okay. Did it work? Okay, did I get it in? All right, so I got that one. So stacking, because I definitely wanted to mention this. Stacking character. Ability scores. Okay, I think that covered all the little bits and pieces that I had talked about in here. I have got a little bit on automatic success, but I'm not going to worry about putting it into the slide. Sweet, done. Nice. All right. Moving on, next one. Dodge, evade, block, full defense. So I didn't put anywhere near enough in here, and I'm totally aware of that. It's just one of those things where I had assumed that I could get away with doing less, but I think I need to do more, because we talked about, this is why I just put the headers in there. So dodge requires you use your main action, so the character or monster are more difficult to hit with attacks, and all enemies have disadvantage on attack rolls and grant advantage on dexterity saving throws. This is D&D 5e. That is the mechanics for 5e. But There's a difference between dodge, evade, block, and full defense. There is a sort of a slight difference to that. Requires you to use your... Okay, right. So dodge and evade are pretty close to the same thing. Dodge or evade so this refers to making it harder to be hit. Okay, refers to a player's character or monster trying to be harder to hit, and this can be duplicated with reroll dice mechanics. Where so what we're looking at here is where the attacker rolls multiple dice and takes the lowest result. Alternatively, now a lot of you will be very familiar about how we used to do this before. Yeah, typo on players. Dodge is a reaction. Dodge could be a reaction. If you're going to have reactions. Players. Yeah, thank you. Your dodge could be potentially a reaction. Dodge or evade could be a reaction rather than a main action. Okay, now what I was trying to say here, alternatively, dodge or evading could be represented by adding a numerical bonus to the character or monster's armor or defenses. Armor or hang on. Here we go. Defenses. Defenses of +1, +2, or +5, etc. Something like that. So numerical bonuses. So that is this is what we used to do. Is older versions of D&D used to use numerical bonuses, +1, +2, +5. There were other numbers. If you're playing Star Wars Saga, I believe there was a +4 somewhere in there somewhere. So yeah. So that's another way of approaching it if you really wanted to. If you don't want to use, if you're not very partial to advantage and disadvantage as a mechanic where you're re-rolling dice, rolling more than one dice to determine a result for any kind of dice mechanic, then get rid of it and use numbers. Provided your players can remember that they're going to use those things, that's great, right? It works for them, it works for you. Otherwise, go back to using a re-roll mechanic. Now, blocking is interesting. Do you know what I find interesting about blocking is like setting yourself up. Because what it suggests is it kind of does the same sort of thing, and then it kind of doesn't. Because if you ever had to block, if any of you have ever been involved in any kind of close quarter fighting and you've tried to block something, usually you have a couple of outcomes when you're blocking. One is you take impact damage anyway, or you block and you take no impact damage. But quite often impact damage and being knocked back when you block happens. We used to block with our arms. Somebody's trying to kick you, you block with your arms, but your arms are at the end of the night when I was doing martial arts, my arms would be covered in bruises. You know, it's bone to bone, and the flesh behind the flesh in front of the bone is just not heavy enough to stop all those blows coming through. It's the same when you're using your legs to stop incoming blows, when you block with that. Now, if you're using a shield, that's completely different, right? If you're using a shield, that's different. Blocking with a shield should always be easier than using body parts, using a body's limbs, or a weapon. Blocking with a weapon is quite difficult to do. Do you know what I mean? There's a lot of timing involved. It means you have to be faster than they were, because they initiated the attack, so they will have already started before you even react. So you have to be faster than they are. Now, but it can still be represented. Rep. Come on, Fred, rep. Represented with a reroll dice or numerical bonus. Kind of the same sort of thing going on there. And I actually think blocking and full defense, I need to put them together. So that's what I wanted to put in there. What I do sometimes is that you can, as a reaction to a dodge block, and halve the amount of damage you would take, but also reduce your movement speed to 0, and actions on your next turn are taken with disadvantage. I see. Yeah. But that was part of what I was trying to say, is that, you know, blocking is probably going to mean that you you can reduce damage rather than completely eliminate it. But there might be the option to do both. There's a lot to be said for saying, we have an action here that potentially its purpose is to reduce damage. So that means that even if you take it, really you're just trying to halve the damage. So potentially blocking incoming force will still do some damage rather than eliminate it. That's completely or knock the blocker backward. So this is one of the things I found is you didn't always get knocked backwards, but you can pretty much become, if it's a really strong blow, then getting knocked backwards was kind of common. Getting knocked prone was very rare. You'd have to be hit by a lot of force to be knocked prone, because you're trained to make sure you understand how to balance yourself. And your adventurers are probably trained to do that, right? So they're not going to just get knocked over prone. But getting knocked backwards, absolutely. So blocking would be sort of one of those things where, okay, we're going to do this, but I'm probably going to get knocked backwards. I might be able to reduce some of the damage, but not all of the damage. The problem with making blocking, your choices are, one, you take no damage whatsoever, or if you fail, you take half damage, is you're never going to use the dodge or evade action if you're going to have dodging and evading. So this is why I'm suggesting that you're probably going to take some damage and you're probably going to get knocked backwards. But maybe that's a better choice than just trying to avoid the damage completely. It gives players and the game master a few more options in terms of what they can do. Okay. So, more difficult to hit or affect. Yes, all enemies have disadvantage on attack rolls. Now, so what I'm going to say here is, this is the game mechanic for 5e, but what I want to say here is something else. I want to put in here, I want to talk about numerical and... No, what I want to say is I want to say block and full defense. So blocking. Come on. Down. Back it up. And blocking. Come on, you got to be kidding me. Is that going to do that to me? It is. All right. And blocking. Well, doesn't like that. Doesn't like that at all. We can shift it. Let's see. Okay, so blocking, and we'll grab this. Shrink it down a little bit more. Dodging and blocking. So this is here. So let's go, I'm going to talk about, so I want to put in here, no, this is not what I want to say, come back, re-roll dice mechanics, and numerical bonuses. Numerical bonuses. And the last one is the round blocking. So, how blocking works. Okay. So this is going to dodging. Using your main action. Okay, it's more difficult to hit or effect. So, think. Dodging and evading. No, come on, try again. Dodging and evading. Okay, that's better. That's more what I was after. Pretty happy with that. Cool, sweet. Dodge equals you stay in your square. Evade, you must take 5-foot step. Maybe, yes, potentially. I mean, you can differentiate that. really you're working with 5 foot square. Is not, it's not like it's a huge space. So it's, you know, I mean, how much do you need to move? I always found when it comes to dodging and evading, you can move a long distance or you can move a small amount of distance. It is easier to dodge and move a small amount of distance than to move a large distance. Also, it is much easier to not telegraph yourself if you don't move a long distance. If you're moving 5 feet compared to just a few millimeters, and millimeters is just be a fraction of an inch, okay, then that's the best way to go, is just a fraction of the inch. Okay, what you're trying to do is you're trying to conserve your energy, because a fight can be exhausting. So the more you move, the harder it is. You put your energy into applying force in the right place and using leverage. You don't want to burn up a lot of energy trying to go on the defensive, because you will just not last. Okay, so movement. Let's have a look at movement. We've done dodge and blocking, and I've got disengage here. Why have I got disengage? I've got movement. Ah, I see. It's because I had decided to change what I was going to put here. I had put down disengage here, but had I decided to actually remove it as I had. I decided that disengage was a pain in the butt. That's what it was. And I wanted to call it just movement. That's probably what was going on here. Then I've got dash and run. So I've got two separate ones. Casting a spell. So what have I done here? Well, I suppose what I can do is maybe I should split it up and have three panels. It's probably like 3 panels, isn't it? Really, you think about it. Retreat. So disengage or retreat. Retreat. Come on, Fred, get it right. Retreat. Got it. Is block equal parry? Yes, block would be parry. So I'll. That's exactly right. So I'll put that down in there. Block would be like parry. There you go, blocking or parrying incoming force. There we go. So that's that bit done. Disengaging, tumble, or retreat requires you use your main action in conjunction with your movement, so that a creature or member doesn't provoke attacks of opportunity when moving away from a threat. Okay, so this is very much the 5e mechanic. So let's mark it as such, because that's what it is. That is it there. We don't want to have it number 3. That's not going to work, so we'll just change that. There we go, that's better. And then disengage. Disengage, retreat, disengage, retreat. And retreat. That ain't gonna work, so we'll just shuffle this across and grab this little sucker, and it squizzes it down a bit, and a bit more maybe. Yeah, okay, sweet. Did I not? Oh, I didn't put in blocks. Retreat. Seriously? There we go. All right. Okay, retreat. Got it. So those are all concepts that go in here, and we just need to fill out what I want to put here. Okay. Oh, there's more than I thought. I haven't looked at this for like a month now, so there's a little bit more than I expected. So first off, retreating, disengaging. So disengaging. So disengaging is not necessarily about, I mean, you'd think it would be about leaving combat, but it's not, is it? Disengaging from a battle, a close quarter battle, can involve leaving the fight or moving around the front line opponents, because that's essentially what 5e does, right? So there's a little bit going on there in terms of disengaging and retreating around to the okay. There we go. So tumbling is moving through the opponent's space to get a better position or escape the close proximity. So proximity, this is usually determined by a ability or attribute dice roll test. There is usually something like that going on. For those of you who are aware of how it works in 5e, there is some instructions in the Dungeon Master Guide, but almost all of them usually involve some sort of dice roll test. Yeah. Next, tumbling and then retreating. Retreating from a battle is always removing the character or monster from further battle. But do you include the ability to escape without penalty, which is always the question, right? Or allow fleeing characters or creatures to be cut down. That is it would be rough to imply a cut down mechanic where if you flee there's a possibility of being cut down. So that would be really, really rough if you put that into a game. It would be hard to be able to, expect anybody to ever take an action that was retreat. If your action was to retreat and it wasn't really feasible without being cut down, you'd never do it. Which is perfectly normal in real battles. Running away usually means you die. But for the sake of game mechanics, it certainly opens up the fact that now people can run away. In 5e, running away in a battle doesn't usually work. You have to be faster than everybody else, and you have to have more actions than anybody else. If your opponent has the same amount of speed, has the same amount of actions, you can't escape. So, and this applied to something like 3.5. You couldn't escape in that one. Even in 4E, you could not escape. I'm not completely familiar or remember anything around AD&D, but I would imagine there were probably mechanics for cutting you down in combat as you're fleeing. So it was probably not a good idea. So disengaging, there are a few things I need to highlight in here. Using your main action. Disengage, requires using the main action. Disengage in conjunction with movement. It's not provoking attacks of opportunity. I actually need to make this smaller because there's a little bit more that needs to go in here now. I want to put in here tumbling and retreating. How does tumbling work? Question mark. And how does retreating work? Okay, so if retreating from combat leads to death, then monsters and players would never choose to do it without a morale dice test that forced them to test that forced them to. So this is why I'm going to suggest if you're going to allow people to retreat properly, then just allow them to retreat. Like if they take that, that's what they do with their turn. Bam, they're out. And there's no running them down till they're dead. Otherwise, they'll never do it. They would never ever attempt it. Tumbling is different. Changing position, trying to escape from where you currently are to a certain degree would help. But you'd still need to have allies with you, right? So that's tumbling and retreating. Running, sprinting, or dashing requires you use your main action to move your character or your character's speed as extra movement. So that's very, very simple. I don't think we need to do too much with that. I don't want to say very much about it at all, but I will put in here. So this is that one done. Or can I make this a little bit bigger? I probably can. Let's do that now. No, too much. Here we go. Sweet. Next. There's Dash. Hello, Dash. How are you? Run or dash? Run or dash? Now. Oh, man. Sorry about that, people. Is it top of the hour yet? Is it time for me to go take a break? Am I supposed to be tootling off? Probably am. It is top of the hour. Well past top of the hour. I should probably go and take a break. Sprint. I put down sprint, run, sprint, or dash. It's in the text there. If it's not clear, it's right there, Fred. How's it going, Fred Hubber? So, because you mean main action to move your characters or creatures' speed as extra movement. So, to escape or cross a battlefield quickly. So battlefield quickly, players or players of characters or monsters will want to employ running, sprinting, or dashing mechanics. That's really the purpose of it, to escape, cross the battlefield quickly. And I don't think there really needs to be much else said about that. I'm pretty happy with it, what this is. What I will do though is dashing. And I feel that almost all mechanics tend to say that if you're going to run or sprint, it's going to take up your main action. But D&D 5e mechanic it is. Most game systems will require the action of a character to run or sprint, because it takes all their time in the turn. So in a turn, in our turn. There we go. Right. So let's just make sure that I have this. And we're going to shrink this down a little bit, make it a little bit less. And I'm going to stick in a couple of little provisos in here, extra movement. So this is escaping, crossing battlefields, basically. This is what we'll be using it for. To escape battles. And the other one, and we'll make it smaller again. Sorry about this, people. And running to cross battlefield. Battlefield. All right. You still have that lag. Not good. Sprint. Yep. Sprint. Run. Okay. Essentially the same concepts, people. All I've done is just change the wording so I'm not saying the same thing over and over again. And how did I manage to mess up the... That's that size. That's 21. That's 24. Oh, so that's 24. It should be a smaller size. 21. And that's 20. 21, 21. It looks a little odd, but okay, I think I've got it right. Let's just... No. Try again. Yeah. And we can make it a little bit bigger. Yeah, okay. Alright. Alright, so that's the run and the dash. So I should definitely take a break, because I've been going at this for a little bit too long. I'm not going to be spending... I honestly don't think I'll be spending a lot of time on the other things. I feel like I'm mostly done. So we are relatively close to sort of me wrapping up these bits and pieces, which means I'm just going to drop some images in at the end. But I'm going to ask you a question, because I'm kind of curious as to how your hashtag. Have you been enjoying the open discussion on basic combat mechanics? That's going to be my question to you. I know it's not for everybody, but I'm going to put that up as my question while I go quickly take a break, come back and continue on, hopefully finishing very, very shortly. Anyway, 5 minutes or less. Okay, all right. Well, good. I'm glad that there's a few of you who have been finding it interesting and useful, or just interesting. Okay. I just realized I should be covering or dealing with movement as well before I jump to the other things. But before I do that, I want to go to the poll and have a look at the poll and see how that's coming along. What is the most important combat mechanic in your opinion for a role-playing game? 50% said rolling dice. Okay. Numerical bonuses, +1, +2, or +2, 10%. Easy to understand, 30%. Fits a narrative that makes sense, 10%. Out of 20 votes. Interesting. You mean if this was representative of the general population, which I'm not suggesting it is, but if this would mean that what Wizards of the Coast does fits with what people want, which is dice mechanics, which I find interesting. And maybe people just like rolling dice, but yeah, I wasn't expecting that result, but I suppose I should, because like Wizards of the Coast's marketing team will have figured out down to the, what people want generally, if they've done their job properly. So obviously, lots of fiddly dice mechanics would probably make a lot of sense if you got 50% saying yes, that's what we want. Wouldn't have guessed. Would have been my first choice, but I learned something. Let's jump over here and continue with what we were doing. Movement. Since movement is kind of absolutely essential to a game, let's deal with movement now. Moving and movement is restricted by a character's or monster's speed or how far they can move in squares, hexes, or since I'm a war gamer from the past, we also used measurement. So or measurement, and that would be, say, metric. I'm in a country that deals with metric, not imperial. Okay. Now, probably the most common mechanic that we've seen pop out when it comes to movement is you move and then you take your action, or you take your action and then you move. So applications of moving is take your actions before or after moving. But moving can be split up or separated during a turn with actions for more player and game master flexibility. And this is the D&D 5e way. And I did say I really like the way that D&D 5e allows you to split and separate things. As long as you don't use more than your allocated speed or movement distance, you're all good. It's a great way to look at the game. It makes so much more sense than the very gamey, you either move and then take your action, or you take your action and then you move, but you can't separate the movement. And yet it's not that hard to adjudicate. As we know, most of us have been doing it for ages, right? You prefer hexes over squares as it's more consistent with range. Squares just fit rooms and houses better. I know what you're talking about. We're talking about diagonal movement here. I know what that's all about. Okay, so movement can include, darn it, can include climbing, jumping, hate jumping, climbing, jumping, swimming, flying, what is the other one? Crawling. Did I miss anything? Climbing, jumping, swimming, flying, crawling, or what's the other one? Is there another one? I think that's that covers everything. Movement. Jumping, climbing, swimming. Oh. Walking. I didn't say walking. Or walking. Yep. Teleportation spells. Yeah, teleportation spells are a little bit different. That's more of a spell, isn't it? We're working with spells now, or walking. So that is movement can include climbing, jumping, swimming, flying, sorry, crawling or walking. Penalties can be so different penalties can be applied to different modes of movement, or simply halve the speed of the character or monster. I think another thing that 5e needs to be commended for is just saying you halve movement if you climb, jump, swim, or crawl. Unless you are, unless you're specially designed and capable of flying will be at your whatever your flying speed is. But generally, if you're dealing with this, it's much easier to work with. Simply halve the speed of the character, rather than applying different penalties to each mode of movement. It's such a much harder thing to contend with. We've had to deal with this in the past. Passenger on a vehicle, creature. Oh, yeah. Is it really going to? Movement will certainly. I'm thinking movement of a character. I'm not really thinking of movement of vehicles. It can include. I see what you're saying. Okay. I'll add this in as a. Okay, so mounts and vehicles. And vehicle movement, mount. Sorry, you do make a good point. Mount and vehicle movement will have a different system to a character or monster. Because they are affected by they aren't affected by the same factors. There we go. I think that's what you were trying to point out. I've put it in. It's in there now. Prepare, cook, and survive. You got it. Well done. Thank you. Fred, yeah, that's the one. I missed walking. I got walking in there. All right, movement. Let's make just a new slide. I'm just going to copy this slide here. Chuck it in the right place, roughly. Is it going to go there? No, it's not. Let's try it again. You've got to be kidding me. Okay. Paste it. Oh, guys, I've gone in the wrong place. Movement. Well, none of that applies, so let's get rid of this. Whoops. It just occurred to me that might not be such a great idea. We'll just lose everything then. And then I can just go here. Movement restricted by speed. Movement restricted by speed. Oh, okay. Smaller. Okay. Next. Well, it's still way too big. It's not going to work. Let's just shrink this down a lot more. Give myself a bit more space. So common applications. Okay. How movement can work. Thank you. All right. I'm getting there. It's just a little bit of a jiggly jaggly. Okay, so different modes of movement, vehicles, mounts. Modes of movement. Mounts and vehicles. And what else have we got here? Penalties. Movement penalties. I think the one thing that I remember the most is from 3.5, and movement penalties were just all over the place. Like, oh god, it used to drive me batty having to contend with it. Diagonal movement, horizontal movement was not fun. All for the sake of trying to appease the Pythagoras and Pythagoras never measured in hexes and squares in the first place, so it doesn't make sense at all. I've had this argument with people before. Like, I'm trying to apply a penalty like that, sometimes just didn't make any sense. Because you get all these weird results that would occur because you're using squares and you're not using inches, you're not using millimeters or centimeters or anything like that. Once you're actually using measurement, it makes sense. But squares, because of the shape of a square, it just doesn't make sense. Counting squares, tape measures, string, determining year. I think I had that down here. Did I not have a section? Yeah, metric and imperial. So I've got all that stuff in here. It's all there. That's good. That's fine. Now, casting a spell. I don't really want to change anything with this because, frankly, I think it's perfectly fine the way it is. I think that kind of covers all of what you normally have to deal with spells. And the slideshow, I'm fine with. Attack rolls. I don't think I need to change anything with that. I mean, I could add in more different types of weapons that are made with a melee, that are made with, as a melee weapon attack. I could add in a lot more ranged weapons if I wanted to. If people want me to add some stuff in, I suppose I could. Thrown weapons, I've marked down all the thrown weapons. And I've marked down all sort of the unarmed strikes, head, neck. Oh. Have I? Tail. Pincer. Or body part. So I'm pretty happy with that. I think that's all fine. Injuries, terrain, obstacles, and traps, restrictions. Oh, you're talking about difficult terrain in terms of movement. Fair enough. Prepare, cook, and survive. I probably should mention that because I didn't. Did I? I decided to just whip on past movement penalties. So yes, fair enough. I agree. I do probably need to say something with that. Types of actions, and I will. Types of actions. I don't want to go over types of actions because we did a really good job of narrowing that all down and of sort of what that looks like. I was actually pretty happy. There was one here that I had a question mark beside, but I'm actually going to leave it as is. I feel like that's all that needs to be there. Types of actions. I'm happy to leave that as it is. So I will. Which means... Well, I'm almost there. Okay, so before I forget your point, which is difficult terrain and movement. Okay. Moving through, so what is the, through terrain that is hazardous or difficult to navigate safely will have its own restrictions that could be now half speed. What's the other restriction in terms of movement terrain that you people have come across? Half speed is one of the most common ones I've seen, but there's another one which is you just deduct 5 feet of movement. Deduct 5 feet of movement. Deduct a specific number of feet or squares. Of movement. So that's really that covers everything. That's the lot there. Count facing, some even count movement to turn. Yeah, facing is one of those things. I'm kind of wondering, would I bring in something like facing in basic? I feel like facing is it's even beyond facing. The concept of facing, Fred, which you make a good point. The concept of facing is even more advanced than complex combat mechanics, which I'll do next week, right? It's another level of complexity. It's why the designers of 5e have avoided facing, because facing suddenly requires the game master to make a lot of calls. And obviously Wizards of the Coast does not want the game master making too many calls, because they feel like that's going to be set up animosity between the players and the game master, because we're dealing with too many people who are strangers that are playing together, right? That's really what it is. If you're playing with friends, it's usually not a big issue if you've been playing for a while. If you're friends but you haven't been playing for that long, you might give yourself each other a bit of leeway. If you're complete strangers, you really don't know what to make of this. So yeah, I think facing is something I'll leave. Doubling cost. Yeah, well, doubling the cost is the same as halving speed. Do you know what I mean? doubling the cost and halving speed. It's all right. Half speed. Double cost of moving. So yeah, that covers all of your bits and pieces there. Oh, I think I think what we're talking about now: prepare, cook, and survive. I totally where you go. We get where you're going here. I don't know that I'm going to go that far into that. But you're right. Certain things that are hazardous are going to cause your injuries, for sure. Moving through terrain that is hazardous or dangerous to navigate safely will have its own restrictions that could be half spin and causing injuries. That didn't work. Let's try that. Okay, so we've got so the slide doesn't have to change, but I've changed the actual Google Doc. All right, so that's a bit more helpful. I think that's all good with that. Let's have. Where did I get up to? I was like, oh, I'm near the end. It's finally there. Can I finish it off? So, turn order and initiative check. Let's have a look at turn order and initiative check. Types of actions. I've already done this. Oh, turn order. Oh, that's right. I wanted to separate this a little bit. Combat, turn order, or initiative. And then I have types of actions. I have this. That's fine. This is a little bit of an issue. I will have to tidy that up. So how's that going to look? So there was a point. I wanted to separate something, didn't I? That's what I had said before. That's why I highlighted that section. So let me just have a look at this, read through, and just get my head around this. No, that's not what I'm worried about. So normally the game master opens a combat encounter with a description of what monster is threatening the characters, and then ask for initiative roll to determine turn order. So that's not always the case. If player characters initiate a fight, then turn order will need to be determined if a player character initiates a fight, then turn order will need to be determined. Was I going to say anything else here? I had it. There was something on the tip of my tongue, and I lost it. Look, I already said in the movement section you can have different ways of moving through, for your different modes of transport and your different terrains that might be different as well. That's already there. I don't think I need to go into that, but I get what you're saying, Fred. So, I've made it part of that section. I've also said you can just go half movement and that'd be it. Right? I think that's a very simple, elegant way of dealing with it. Player initiates a fight, then turn order will need to be determined. I think that is. Okay, initiative rolls are a special ability check that is the result of adding an ability score, dexterity, to a 20-sided dice roll. So this is the D&D way, yeah. This is D&D 5e basically. This is what we do with D&D 5e. But this is what I wanted to add in. This is why I highlighted it so I didn't forget. Okay, turn order rolls can also use wisdom or other attribute modifiers that make sense. And this is what I wanted to say, because not all systems use dexterity. Yeah. So what was the other one? I was trying to remember. I mean, so there's plenty of systems that don't even use that, but I've already got that there. All player characters and monsters' initiative rolls are placed in order of highest to lowest, with the highest initiative starting first in combat. Well, this is D&D 5e. Okay. Anyone surprised doesn't get to act or take a turn in the first round. So this usually applies to all systems. They're usually surprised when you look at systems that are outside of D&D. That's always going to work that way. The combat turn order can use many different rule systems. So I've put down turn orders clockwise or anti-clockwise, different dice rolls for initiative depending on the class, no dice rolling, and use a flat bonus. Flat bonus initiative is really, really tempting as a game master. Players don't like it, but it's very tempting as a game master to employ something that's got a flat bonus that just doesn't change, because your ranking it's always going to be the same. It's really, really handy. All right, what else have we got here? I'm almost out of time, and I think I had put down all the bits and pieces I wanted in here, which is good news. So let's have a look at this. Threatening monster, I want to ask for initiative roll. Characters and monsters placed in order. Initiative rolls highest to lowest. Highest initiative starting first in combat. Anyone surprised on act. We need to add in a couple of other things here. So this needs to change just a little bit. Okay. There we go. That's what I'll put there. Initiative rolls. There are some systems that use low numbers too, I'd forgotten. Used to have weapon speeds, yes, and modifiers. Very complicated. I don't know anybody other than Mike Merles who had suggested it recently in the last few years. It's a torturous concept. I don't think I actually need to say this. I'm also placed in order. I'm actually going to just remove that bit. And okay. Does everybody understand the only reason to have a turn order is just to manage the table? I mean, outside of anything else, the most important reason for having turn order is simply to manage the table. Okay. Turn order and initiative is primarily used in a game to manage the players in the group, not be realistic indications of speed, of indications of, is the word speed what I want? Yet to ensure player skip. Yeah, it's really, you don't want to avoid anybody losing their turn. Not be realistic indications of reaction time. Okay, that's really what I wanted to say here. Okay, so what I want to put in here is different types of turn order. Different types of turn order. Let's put that in there. And what's the other thing here? What's this? Okay, so let's just go there. I think we'll just make it larger. I can shuffle it up. And I think that's good enough. That's good enough. That will do. Okay, good. I'm happy with that. I think we've done. I won't be returning to this, by the way, people. We won't be returning to this. What we will be doing, what I will be doing, is I will be covering specific, basic combat mechanics for a specific game system. Okay. My plan is I will probably start with Hero Quest because, as I said, I want to go back to the very beginning of where I started my gaming, and I spent a lot of time with my family playing Hero Quest. So I want to look at Hero Quest, and then probably the journey will be Hero Quest followed by Star Wars Saga RPG, followed by Dungeons and Dragons 4E and that game system and their rules, followed by Dungeons and Dragons 3.5, if I can get my head around how to contend with Advanced Dungeons and Dragons, since I never really played it that well, or even to the rules, frankly. We kind of just did our own thing. And it's a mishmash of Advanced Dungeons and Dragons and a different board game system. If I can get my head around that, we'll do some AD&D. But Bulldogs, which is a fate system, and if I ever manage to get my hands on Pathfinder 2nd edition, I'll cover that. I have played Pathfinder 1st edition, but it's so similar to 3.5, I see no point, frankly. But that's where my head is at. So 2 weeks from now, we will go on a journey, which means about every single month you're going to get a look at a completely new game system, which I will demonstrate. Back to kind of what I used to do. Yeah, just I did it for 5e. So if you're wondering what is in the future, that is where this has all been leading ultimately. Okay. All right. Let's end my poll here. The poll has been going well. We've got a few people voted in here, which is great. I appreciate that. So we'll end it. And yeah, most people like rolling dice, which is why there's so much dice rolling in the modern version of D&D. Okay. I want to say a big thank you to all of my patrons who support me on Patreon so that I can do this, and it really does make a big, huge difference. This particular program itself will roll out in the future, but as I said, we'll be looking at a lot of different systems rather than just 5e. I also want to thank everybody who took part in the poll today, on the live stream poll. Thank you for doing that. Everybody who took part in the chat, really big, huge thank you. Specifically to Prepare, Cook and Survive, F. Hubber, who else was here that I have missed? Derry, To Be, Dungeons and Chronics for jumping in and at least saying hi, how's it going? And also to Carl. And yeah, big thank you for actually taking part and commenting, because otherwise I would have been on my own on all of this. Thank you for everybody who just sat there and watched and listened during the live stream as well, or is rewatching. Okay, so wherever you are in the world, you know the deal. Whether it's a morning, a night, or an afternoon, look after yourself, your family, and your friends. And if you've got neighbours, please be nice to your neighbours. And hey, till next time, keep rolling those 20s.